Chosen one, on August 11th, God is calling you to recognize why your heart must not be handed to the wrong person, even when loneliness makes compromise feel like relief. You may have smiled through conversations while a quiet warning tightened your chest, because something in you knows that affection is not the same as alignment. The person who wants access to your heart may not be the person entrusted with your future. That realization can make your room feel unusually silent, your phone strangely heavy, and your thoughts restless after everyone else has gone to sleep. You keep asking whether you are being too careful, too slow, or too difficult to love. But the deeper question is whether you are finally becoming honest about what peace has been telling you. Sometimes obedience begins when you stop calling confusion chemistry and stop calling emotional pressure a sign. If you sense that this season matters but cannot yet name what it is forming, the call of the chosen. A 30-day journey can help you identify the season you are living and understand why it feels so significant. It can help you reflect with greater clarity instead of interpreting every delay as rejection, and you can access it now by going to the top of the comments and clicking the link in the pinned comment. Your heart is not a public hallway where anyone may enter simply because they knocked at the right emotional hour. The question before you is not whether you can be loved, but whether you will obey before the wrong attachment teaches you to abandon yourself. There is a particular kind of tiredness that does not come from physical work. It appears when you have spent too many evenings explaining away what your spirit already recognized in the first conversation. You wash a cup, place your phone face down, and then turn it over again because a message from that person has become connected to your sense of worth. Your shoulders rise when their name appears. Your breathing changes when they become distant. You tell yourself that everyone has flaws, and that is true, but grace does not require you to ignore patterns that repeatedly disturb your conscience. You may have noticed that you pray less freely when you are trying to preserve a connection. You may have started attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment, editing your convictions so the relationship would not feel threatened. The cost is not always dramatic at first. Sometimes it is simply the slow disappearance of your own voice. You laugh at things that hurt you, accept explanations that do not satisfy you, and call the resulting emptiness patience. Yet obedience is not cruelty, and discernment is not hatred. Protecting your heart can be an act of reverence toward the one who gave it to you. This message is not telling you that every difficult person must immediately disappear from your life, or that a single uncomfortable feeling proves someone is wrong for you. It is calling you to examine what a relationship consistently produces in you. Does it draw you toward honesty, patience, self-control, compassion, and prayer? Or does it train you to live in secrecy, fear, performance, and emotional dependence? You are allowed to observe fruit before offering trust. You are allowed to move slowly when your peace has been repeatedly interrupted. You are allowed to say that attraction is real while still admitting that attraction alone cannot carry the weight of covenant, friendship, or faithful companionship. The date in this title is a marker for reflection and renewed obedience, not a guarantee that a particular event must occur on that day. August 11th can remind you to stop negotiating with a truth you have been postponing. It can invite you to recognize the difference between being wanted and being wisely received. It can teach you that God's protection may sometimes feel like an unanswered desire, a delayed relationship, or the courage to leave a door open only to peace. Picture an ordinary morning when you are getting ready for work, ministry, errands, or responsibilities that do not pause for your private confusion. The coffee cools beside you because you are rereading a conversation from the night before. Nothing in the message is openly cruel, yet something about the tone leaves you feeling smaller. You begin drafting a reply, delete it, write another, and wonder how a simple exchange became a test of whether you deserve tenderness. The wrong person often does not announce themselves as danger. Sometimes they arrive through charm, attention, shared wounds, or timing that makes their presence feel like rescue. They may say the words you have been longing to hear, but words must eventually meet character. You cannot build a safe future on promises that require you to ignore the present. As you stand there with one hand on the counter and the other holding your phone, notice what your body is telling you without making your body the final authority. Let the uneasiness lead you into prayer, wisdom, counsel, and patient observation. The right response is not panic, it is attention. You may have wondered why certain connections keep appearing when you are most vulnerable. You may meet someone just after a season of rejection, and their intensity feels like proof that the waiting is over. You may feel seen because they ask about your pain, then discover that they use your pain to gain influence over your choices. Or you may be drawn to someone who seems familiar because they repeat a pattern you learned long ago. Familiarity can feel like home even when it is only recognition of an old wound. This is why waiting, without understanding, can exhaust the heart. You do not know whether the pause is preparation, closure, redirection, rebuilding, or simply an invitation to stop forcing an answer. Many readers who arrived feeling confused or tired of waiting said the material helped them understand their season more clearly, organize their prayers, or stop interpreting every silence as abandonment. The Call of the Chosen. A 30-day journey offers a way to reflect on those distinctions, notice what the season is teaching, and respond without turning every delay into a verdict about your value. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. Then return to the question beneath the question. What kind of person are you becoming while you wait? The answer will reveal more than urgency ever could. The first opposition is pressure. Pressure tells you that if you do not accept this person now, you may never receive another opportunity. It turns a relationship into a countdown and makes every boundary feel like a threat to your future. Comparison joins the pressure by showing you other people's engagements, anniversaries, homes, and apparently settled lives. You see a photograph online and imagine that everyone else has been chosen while you remain in a waiting room with no explanation. Fear then whispers that discernment is only a sophisticated name for loneliness, but a hurried heart is easy to persuade. It will accept crumbs and call them provision because it is more afraid of emptiness than of misalignment. You do not need to compete with another person's timeline. You do not need to prove that you are desirable by staying available to someone who cannot treat your convictions with respect. A relationship that depends on your fear of losing it is already asking for too much. Slow down enough to see what remains when the excitement fades, the messages become ordinary, and the person has no immediate advantage in being kind. Pressure demands a decision. Wisdom gives you room to see. Scripture gives us a picture of discernment through Joseph, whose life was shaped by dreams, betrayal, delay, and responsibilities he could not control. Joseph did not become faithful only when his circumstances improved. He learned to carry integrity in rooms where nobody applauded it. In your ordinary life, that may mean answering a message honestly instead of strategically, refusing to hide your convictions to keep someone interested, or leaving a conversation when respect disappears. Joseph's story does not prove that every painful relationship will lead to visible success, and it does not turn suffering into a romantic sign. It shows that character can be guarded even when the future is unclear. You may be in a season where no one understands why you are moving slowly. They may call you guarded because you will not surrender your judgment to chemistry. Let them misunderstand the pace if necessary. Your task is not to make everyone comfortable with your obedience. Your task is to remain truthful before God and gentle toward people. The same God who sees the whole road can teach you how to take the next step without pretending you can see every turn. Ignoring the signal has a cost, though that cost is not a curse imposed on you. When you repeatedly silence your discernment, you teach yourself that peace must always yield to attention. You begin to mistrust your own ability to recognize what is healthy. The cycle may look small at first. You notice disrespect, excuse it. You feel rushed, accommodate it. You lose sleep, call it excitement. You feel distant from prayer, call it a busy week. After enough repetitions, the relationship becomes harder to evaluate because you have invested not only time, but explanations. You defend the connection to others because admitting the truth would mean admitting that you hoped the person would become someone they have not shown themselves to be. Yet the end of denial is not humiliation, it is release. You can acknowledge that you wanted something sincerely and still accept that sincerity does not make it suitable. You can grieve a possibility without naming it a failure. The heart becomes safer when it stops demanding that every closed door explain itself in a way that satisfies the imagination. Sometimes the clearest answer is the peace that returns after you stop forcing contact. So hear the title again, in its deeper meaning. Chosen by God does not mean entitled to every person you desire. It means invited into a life where obedience matters more than emotional possession. The command to obey is not a demand to become cold, suspicious, or isolated. It is a call to stop giving sacred access to people who have not demonstrated sacred responsibility. If this moment feels like a threshold of honesty, type the words 888 in the comments as a simple confirmation that you are choosing clarity over confusion. Then return your attention to the message. You are not performing a spiritual transaction through those words, and you are not forcing an outcome by writing them. You are simply naming the decision that must become real in your private conduct. The next step may be a conversation, a pause, a boundary, an apology, or a refusal to continue pretending. Whatever it is, let it arise from wisdom rather than panic. A heart that obeys does not become empty. It becomes available for what is true. The conflict is also internal, because the wrong person is not always the only issue. Sometimes the deeper pattern is your willingness to abandon your own discernment whenever someone offers affection. You may have learned to measure love by intensity, to interpret jealousy as investment, or to believe that being needed is the same as being honored. You may have spent so long earning acceptance that freely given respect feels unfamiliar. This does not make you foolish. It means you have a place in your heart that needs patient truth instead of accusation. When you are afraid of being left, even an unhealthy connection can feel safer than an uncertain future. When you are exhausted from waiting, the first available hand can seem like an answer, but the relief of being chosen by a person cannot heal the pain of choosing against yourself. You need to ask what you are trying to escape whenever you feel compelled to surrender your standards. Are you avoiding silence, grief, disappointment, or the possibility that God's protection will require a season of being alone? The root is not shame. The root is the place where fear has been making decisions under the name of love. Recognition alone is not enough when you need to decide what to do with what you have recognized. If you can name the pattern but still return to it whenever the person becomes affectionate, you need a practical way to slow the cycle and choose a faithful response. The Call of the Chosen, a 30-day journey, can serve as a companion for reflection, prayer, discernment, daily decisions, and identifying the next faithful step without panic-driven reactions. It can help you place your questions in order, distinguish fear from direction, and turn a vague sense of warning into a calmer process of attention. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. You do not need to treat the book as a spiritual object or as a substitute for wise counsel. Use it as a focused aid while you examine your choices honestly. Then notice what happens when the question changes from "How do I keep this person?" to "How do I remain faithful in this situation?" That question moves the center of your life back to obedience. It does not remove all grief, but it gives grief a truthful place to stand. Your mind may build a careful argument while your body carries a different message. Your reasoning may say that the person has good qualities, that no one is perfect, and that you should be more flexible. Your body may show you that every interaction leaves you braced, distracted, or afraid to speak plainly. A bodily reaction is not automatic proof that a person is wrong, just as calm feelings are not automatic proof that a person is right. But both can become information worth bringing into prayer and wise conversation. Your spirit may recognize a conflict before your reasoning can explain it, yet spiritual recognition should not make you reckless or self-righteous. Ask for patience while you gather facts. Observe whether the discomfort decreases through honest communication or grows when you express a reasonable boundary. Notice whether the other person becomes curious about your experience or punishes you for having one. Discernment does not require a dramatic sign when consistent evidence is already present. It often looks like the courage to remain still long enough for the truth to become ordinary. Your mind, body, and spirit do not need to compete. They can be brought together under humility. Relationships are not evaluated in isolation from environments. Notice how you feel after spending time with the person, but also notice what happens to your other responsibilities. Do you become less present with family, less honest with friends, less committed to your work, or less willing to participate in the life God has already placed before you? A connection may be unhealthy, not because it consumes every minute, but because it quietly rearranges your priorities around one person's moods. At the same time, do not let discernment become suspicion toward everyone who disagrees with you. A wise friend may challenge your interpretation without trying to control you. A healthy community can ask difficult questions while preserving your dignity. You can listen without surrendering your judgment. You can receive counsel without outsourcing responsibility. If someone demands that you cut off every voice that sees the relationship differently, pay attention to the isolation being created. If a friend simply tells you what you want to hear, pay attention to that as well. The goal is not to gather a crowd that confirms your fear. The goal is to become honest enough to recognize love that allows truth to remain in the room. Opposition does not always appear as a person actively trying to harm you. Sometimes it is the noise surrounding the decision. Fatigue makes a small message feel urgent. Delay makes a familiar disappointment feel unbearable. Constant entertainment keeps you from hearing the question that returns when the room becomes quiet. Lesser urgencies fill your calendar so completely that you have no space to examine the attachment shaping your choices. You keep telling yourself that you will pray about it after the next task, the next deadline, the next conversation, the next emotional crisis. Meanwhile, the pattern gains strength through repetition. You do not need to answer every message immediately. You do not need to clarify every misunderstanding before sleeping. You do not need to let someone else's anxiety become the schedule of your obedience. A pause can reveal whether a connection has substance or only momentum. When you remove the constant stimulation, you may discover that what felt powerful was simply loud. The enemy of clarity is not always deception. Sometimes it is exhaustion. Rest, quiet, and distance can make room for a truth that pressure kept covering. There comes a moment when you stop negotiating with what you already know. It may happen in a quiet car, after a conversation, in a church hallway, or while standing beside your bed with the phone silent in your hand. You realize that you have not been asking God for wisdom so much as asking for permission to continue. The distinction is painful because it exposes how often you wanted confirmation without surrender. Yet this moment is also a gift. You do not need to make the person a villain in order to make a different decision. You do not need to gather enough evidence to satisfy everyone who benefited from your availability. You can say, "This is not peace," without pretending to know the entire future. You can say, "I will not hand over my heart," without becoming hardened toward love. The title's command becomes personal here. Obey does not mean rush into a dramatic ending. It means stop betraying the conviction that has been asking for honesty. The turning point is not when the other person changes. It is when your relationship with truth becomes more important than your attachment to possibility. Think of your heart now as a garden enclosed by a simple gate, a place where life can grow because access is not careless. The gate is not a wall against all love. It is a point of discernment, a place where entrance is considered rather than assumed. You may have left it open because you were afraid that boundaries would make you unlovable. You may have kept it locked because old disappointment taught you to distrust every hand. But God's invitation is neither reckless openness nor permanent isolation. It is the patient wisdom of tending what has been entrusted to you. At this gate, you do not ask whether someone is impressive enough to enter. You ask whether their presence honors truth, responsibility, patience, and freedom. You watch how they respond when they are told no. You observe whether their care survives inconvenience. You listen for whether their words and actions keep meeting each other. The image gives language to a decision that once felt vague. Your heart has value before another person validates it. Its protection is not a punishment, it is stewardship. And stewardship begins when you stop confusing access with love. Beneath the surface of that garden, much is forming where no one else can see. Roots deepen through seasons that seem unproductive. Soil settles after being disturbed. Old growth is removed so healthier growth can receive light and room. You may look at your life and see only the absence of the relationship you hoped for, but hidden formation may be taking place in your patience, standards, prayer, and ability to remain whole while unanswered questions continue. This does not mean every delay has a secret reward waiting behind it. It means a quiet season can still contain meaningful work. You are learning to recognize what respect feels like without begging for it. You are learning that consistency matters more than intensity. You are learning to let affection develop at a pace where character can be observed. The garden does not become fruitful because someone stands outside praising its beauty. It becomes healthy through care that continues when no one is watching. In the same way, your obedience is being formed through private choices, not replying from fear, not returning to old patterns for comfort, not accepting an apology that has no changed behavior attached to it. Hidden work is still real work. Every garden has conditions that can threaten what is growing. Weeds compete for space. Dryness makes the soil hard. Heavy footsteps can crush what has barely emerged. In your life, those pressures may look like messages that arrive whenever you begin to heal. Memories that make the wrong person appear more desirable than they were, or voices that call your boundaries selfish. You may be tempted to reopen the gate because the outside world has become cold, forgetting why you closed it. You may see someone else receiving the kind of relationship you wanted and assume your own waiting means you have been forgotten. But comparison cannot tell you what another person's relationship truly contains, just as public charm cannot reveal private character. Protection may require removing what repeatedly damages your peace, even when the damage is subtle. It may require changing the places, times, and habits that keep returning you to the same temptation. The garden is not protected by one emotional decision. It is protected by repeated attention. You learn to notice what drains the soil. You learn to stop calling every interruption an invitation. You learn that love should not require you to remain exposed to what continually diminishes you. Then movement begins, not necessarily through a dramatic arrival, but through the gradual opening of what was once closed. You speak more clearly. You sleep without waiting for a message. You regain interest in work, prayer, friendship, and responsibilities that had been pushed to the side. You stop checking whether the person has noticed your absence and begin noticing your own presence again. The gate is still there, but you are no longer standing beside it, begging someone to choose you. You are tending the life inside. This is the movement the title points toward, not the certainty that a particular person will appear, but the faithful shift from surrendering your heart to stewarding it. Sometimes the first sign of healing is not joy, it is neutrality. The conversation that once controlled your mood becomes one piece of information among many. The silence that once felt like abandonment becomes a space where you can hear yourself pray. You may still grieve, but grief no longer commands the entire house. Something in you has begun to rise above the old arrangement. You can move forward without carrying the wrong person as proof that you were once loved. If you recognize yourself in this guarded but living place, type the words "I am awake" in the comments, then return to the message. Let the phrase mean that you are willing to notice what you previously minimized, not that you have solved every question or become incapable of making mistakes. Awareness is a beginning, not a performance. You are awake when you can feel longing without obeying it automatically. You are awake when you can admire someone without making them responsible for your identity. You are awake when you can receive attention without treating it as divine approval. The garden has taught you that not every seed belongs in your soil, and not every open hand should be given the same access. Now the image returns to your actual life. You may need to revise a conversation, create distance, seek counsel, or simply stop feeding a fantasy that has no evidence beneath it. Let the next action be modest enough to practice and honest enough to matter. A faithful life is often rebuilt through small decisions that nobody applauds. What matters is not how impressive the boundary appears, but whether it helps you remain truthful. The command to obey is not a command to perform spiritual strength for other people. It is an invitation to return to the person you are when you are not trying to be chosen by someone else. You can be tender and discerning at the same time. You can forgive without restoring access. You can wish someone well without making room for them in the center of your life. The wrong person does not always need your anger. Sometimes they simply need your absence from the role they were never prepared to carry. This is where the title becomes a practice instead of a sentence. God separated you from certain patterns, not so you would feel superior, but so you would become free enough to love without abandoning truth. The separation may involve a person, a fantasy, a habit of over-explaining, or the belief that loneliness is proof of failure. Do not rush to fill the space. Let the space teach you what you used. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.